Merhaba Istanbul. Yeah, I bring you some warmth and some personal opinions from Helsinki, Finland. This is me on the corner, a regular day through the long winter of Finland. So let's start. I mean, it's amazing to be here. I'm super proud and super excited because looking towards you guys, there are lots of mentors, coaches, role models, peers throughout 2 decades. It's really interesting to look at this audience and then reflect through my personal journey. But you'll see that I'll be very opinionated. I'll try to step back and try to share some perspectives, mostly as thought starters, some triggers that can be applied on principle levels to 10 people teams with emerging IPs, emerging brands, future brands, or it can be applied 500 or even 1,000 people teams. Yeah. So, of course, we have to thank a lot, but I'd like to start with the crew here. They have been doing an amazing job from the very early times of the day, but leading up to this event. So let's make sure that we recognize them. So let's thank the crew first. But also we have Google Istanbul office, broader Google organization. I mean, if they haven't been putting up with me originating from Istanbul, I wouldn't be here on this stage. So thank you, Google. But also we have the constructor of fun. I have been a big fan for a decade, learned a lot from them, Miska and others, amazing blog, and then podcast emerged, and we have more people. We had 2 Erics. I like the other Eric more. I'm getting used to Eric Kress. I hope he'll be sweeter eating after some baklava here. Yeah, but thank you, the constructor of fun. I needed to put this disclaimer. This is all me. It doesn't tie to my previous employers or current employer, but I need to highlight that I was always opinionated strongly in certain things. So I'll have lots of quotes, referrals, and questions. But luckily, no AI visuals, I promise. Plain, simple, straightforward. Yeah, so I'd like to dig deeper into my journey first so you can kind of relate to my opinions, whether you are a local or whether you are visiting. And by the way, to all guests, visitors, thank you for the effort. I met with many of you, so you also spend a lot of time, money to wake up at 4 a.m. or coming here from the day before. I hope you are having a good experience. We are proud with our hospitality here, so please call us out. Yeah, but overall, I refer to Rumi here. We call him, remember him as His Holiness with his longer name. But overall, he's so famous that he's one of the top-selling poets in the US for decades. So you can see the quotes on Brad Pitt's forearm, back arm, or any Instagram post randomly from a celebrity. But I think this quote cuts through in a very different way with my life story or career. But overall, I still think that I have a lot of rawness overall. It requires lots of learning and unlearning, but I think fundamentals remain the same. So I'll focus on fundamentals. I think it should be a fixed reminder for all of us. Let's focus on the fundamentals before breakthroughs. Let's understand what a conversion funnel means. Let's understand what a brand means, and then dig deeper into that. Yeah, but overall, these opinions emerge from launching or relaunching massive franchises, from Angry Birds to Warcraft, Diablo, many games, many sequels, to contributing to Call of Duty launches, and the list goes on. Yeah, but like franchises, all these games, brands, however you call it, like, but what is a franchise in gaming? Who cares in the first place? Do even players care if something as vast as a franchise? I think it's the most important part. We always, in gaming, think that we don't take ourselves seriously, and we take the work itself seriously, the work of fun, business of fun, yet then we come out with these universes, franchises, bundle it with buzzwords. But if it's not fun for a massive franchise, the new expansion, the upcoming sequel, I mean, what happens? Like, overall, it doesn't matter much as long as players have fun or they don't have fun. And then how do we define a franchise? Is it like unit sales shipped? Is it subscriptions sold? Is it number of installs? Is it daily active users? Or is it some kind of equity? I mean, this should be challenged, and we should be humbled by these questions in a way. You can look at the acquisitions and mergers happening in the last few years. If there's a brand equity, then how does a company can be sold for a few $100 million with that brand that has a value of $1 billion? Like, we don't need to name the names in specifics, but it's a very easy math to do. Then on the other hand, what do communities think about it? Like, let's say that we have the ambition to come out with a franchise. Can we actually build a community, or do communities build the games? I think that's the other perspective. And if we look at this perspective, I think we have our ironic examples coming from last year and the year before. For example, BattleBit Remastered. It's quite relevant because there is the name of the game, let's say, is a brand, BattleBit, and then it's a new game, but the name is Remastered. Of course, it's kind of a maybe triple indie or double A indie overall, but yeah, it comes across, cuts through the audience. People connect with it. Millions of people bought it. Could have been bigger. Maybe. I think it's on us how to make bigger, because all of us are proud with the transparency, level of collaboration in this industry. How do we own it as an independent team or emerging brand? Super interesting to challenge. Yeah, but overall, I'll dig deeper into my recipe of launching or relaunching a franchise. There is nothing new here, quite old principles. It applies through decades. I won't get into the KPIs, metrics, or like some trading buzzwords, but overall, I think these principle level pillars remain the same if you're a 10-people company trying to launch your own emerging franchise for the first time or for a sequel, or you may be a bigger organization trying to count down and launch, right? So volume, velocity, and value. And then if you look at volume, again, like, do you try to tame the hype, and how do you count down? Do you collect wish lists? Do you set up a wish list and with a number goal of wish listing, or do you chase pre-registrations, pre-orders on mobile, or maybe you are going cross-platform, or you are trying to build a community on Discord or on Facebook or on Instagram? So what does this volume mean? And how long should it take for the volume develop into a velocity, so you can understand the hype, understand the depth of engagement, and you can look into it from a value perspective, so that you can decide to invest more time, more budgets, maybe look for investments or convince your stakeholders to drive more energy into it, and then frame it out. I think overall, this is applicable all across. And the other angle is, again, there is nothing new here. I don't think there is nothing new under the old sun here in our work. How do you operate? Whether it's a small-sized organization, mid-sized organization, or a bigger one. You align across. You make sure that everyone across the company knows what the shared goals are, but also you try to onboard your partners, because it's, again, we cannot work without our distribution partners, ad networks, production partners. There should be also an alignment outside in. When you are working with the team, how are you developing that common language, right? And then the other angle is inside out. How do you work with your players, prospect community? How do you size it up? How do you balance this with volume and velocity? And then how do you come out? How do you name it? How do you let players own it? How do you allow players to create content for you, expand on it, and so on? So there's this social scientist called Marshall McLuhan. I think my college professors will be proud of me now quoting him. It has been very tough to study, but he's also famous with his quote called, as it goes, medium is the message. So, but this is also wise, and this guy also, I don't know, predicted the internet, predicted globalization, but I think this is super solid. So we all, developers like Mighty, developers all these sizes, we think that like, hey, we shape our communities. We build communities, we shape these franchises at different scales, scopes, but are we sure about it? After we put it out, we come out, and then what happens is, I think, our communities start to shape us. Yeah, so it's another interesting perspective to think and reflect on it. There are, like, I think, dozens of case studies that we can flip, dissect. I'm sure we can reflect on it through longer write-ups, through the constructor of fun or other thought leaders, but it's out there. We are living in it. Yeah, so I think it's really important to stick with these fundamentals and regularly reflect on it as a healthy rhythm and ritual. Yeah, but while doing all these things, I think we need to also remain present and look into things like what do we do about our day-to-day operations? How do we tie our day-to-day operations into a grand strategy? Maybe nest our tactics, rhythms into bigger dolls, and then develop this hierarchy and design the strategy on top of it, so that we can look back and also connect, but also we can look forward and also do better forecasts, do better predictions, and it can be more granular as well. But as long as you have these fundamentals, you can put science behind it, you can increase the accuracy. But do we need to have science in all the steps? Do we need to optimize everything? It's super interesting. So I'll try to dig deeper into these five things to keep in mind. I'll double click in them, but also I want to walk through it a bit. So again, we think that we are building communities, shaping communities. Is it really true? Like, we should be very humble about it, and we should reflect, think deeper on community-first marketing, what it means, how it works, how it can be scaled, how it can be nurtured, and also how it can be measured, how it should be measured. And then, of course, we have teams, like we have talent on the business side with different specializations, and I think it's I think our times, everything gets fragmented, lots of small screens, lots of bigger screens and massive screens. How our players spend their times, how they engage changes a lot. It causes fragmentation. And then we have maybe 12 marketing experts in the same room. But how do we balance this hyper-specialization with generalists, with broader picture? How do we operationalize and make sure that we don't miss the mark while making things happen day over day, week over week? It's really important. I think it's the biggest flaw in bigger teams, whether on the business side, also development side. Because we talk about sometimes like 300, 400, 500 development teams. When they don't have enough generalists, it's very easy to get distracted. It applies to marketing teams as well. Whether you are a 10 people marketing team or 200 people marketing team. If you don't have enough generalists in the room, across the teams, there is always a big risk of becoming irrelevant while spending hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars for go-to-market activities. Then, of course, state of the marketing landscape. Like we talk about technology changes, we talk about privacy, but do the players care about it? They still spend 4 hours to 5 hours a day on mobile screens. I mean, of course, they care about their privacy, they care about how their data is processed, but I don't think it changes actual click-through rates, it changes actual engagement numbers. Of course, every campaign will end up with shitty click-through rates. I mean, this is also not mine, it's a quote from Andrew Chen, so big credit. Yeah, and then the other part is like, from very early morning here, through all sessions, there was always a mention to cross-platform. It's again, fragmentation comes to us. It's really important to remember that whatever platform the games are developed for, wherever our players are playing their games, in the living room, in a portable console, or like in a gaming room with a hardcore $3,000 PC, they make their decisions on the mobile phones. That's simple. I mean, most of the screen time happens on mobile phones. So whether you are in AAA console business or 2A PC business, you are in mobile publishing. If you can't optimize your communication for mobile screens, you are already wasting money. Even at a $100,000 budget scale or $100 million budget scale. It doesn't change. Yeah, and then of course, with all this fragmentation, all platform challenges, all privacy challenges, nothing remains the same. There is lots of unlearning, right? And then relearning, and that cycle, how do you govern the data of marketing? Because it's super messy. The more you collect data, the less value you get out of it. So where is the sweet spot? Yeah, so this is the context. But overall, let's get into the community-first marketing, right? So we can look at many social mobile games. We can look at AAA games that came out with massive hype, and then how community takes them, and then how community accepts them with the faults, with the over-promise versus under-delivery equations. And at the end, it revolves around community. If we look at Steam charts, if we look at App Store, Play Store charts, it's the same thing. It's that the community, how people accept it on individual level, customized level, or at mass level. Of course, it also gets fragmented. Like the way, I would say, sentiment develops and evolves on Reddit versus Facebook versus TikTok, it changes a lot overall. How do we keep up? I think there is, again, the next part comes through here. Do we need to have a Reddit expert, a Discord expert, and a TikTok expert in the room? Or do we need a jack of all trades in the room? how do we balance that mastery and tone and sincerity so that we can cut through the feed and become seen and balance it all across with our own channels, earned media, user-generated content, but also user acquisition. And of course, user acquisition is my bread and butter. Like, I will praise it, glorify it, put it at the center of everything with my own bias very easily. But like, it doesn't change the reality that like it has also a expiration date per game's life cycle. Yeah, and then the marketing landscape. A few years ago, TikTok was a channel to test, and now it's an incumbent platform, a mustn't miss part of the channel mixes. Overall, what's next? Is it Discord? Maybe? Or how do we balance Meta versus Instagram from the portfolio perspective or specific platform perspective? And then how do you tie in generations? Like, we have so many generations playing the same games, even with smaller audiences. I think it all reflects into this like landscape. And overall, how do we tie these also into actual retail presence? I mean, we can talk about, hey, especially starting with mobile, I think, but also it applies to PC and console. It becomes more relevant. Hey, distribution is broken. Is it really broken? Are we coming to a fast conclusion? Or maybe it's like the retail experience, like we are going to a Walmart or a local grocery store to do basic grocery shopping. We always have multitude of options, and as consumers, we make choices. Maybe it's the same with games, right? And then maybe when you have a brand or aspiration of a brand, and if you apply it to the state of marketing and state of the marketing landscape, we may become more relevant. And of course, the mobile publishing side, I think it's quite straightforward. I can like bet with anyone about where conversions happen, where the final influence of buying of any game, 80% should be attributed to mobile, one way or another. You can overdo it, you can measure everything, you can build models for attribution, you can do prediction engines, all that. It's amazing. If you have resources, go for it. But at the end of the day, that screen is the place where people make choices and decisions. Yeah, and overall, this is also very contradictory. So Peter Drucker, like management guru, leadership guru of all time, these two quotes are both from him, right? What gets measured gets managed. And it goes back. I think he's not the only one who phrased it one way or another. Again, nothing is new under this old sun. But then the same person says this: there is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. I think this is also supervised. It should start a lot of thoughts. But overall, it's all about this, like embracing the cycle of unlearning and then looking at the fundamentals. Yeah. Wrapping up, how to launch a monumental franchise. Whether that franchise is a future franchise, as an emerging one for a 10, 20 people development team, or you are a bigger team with an established brand with bigger aspirations for cross-platform, transmedia, broader storytelling, I think you should start with this. That's overall my hypothesis. On the marketing side, you should focus on how you balance volume and velocity and understand your runway, understand your balancing of long-term and short-term financial goals. And then operationally, you need to have a simple, relevant framework to operate and make sure that everyone religiously follows it. Thank you, Istanbul. Thank you, Google.